Welcome to the last video about the Azores. Today, we will see the smallest island of this archipelago, which is the most remote. But there are some surprises waiting for us there, and the first surprise is before we even get to the island. It turns out that we will be the only passengers on the plane to Corvo Island. As it turned out later, this is a fairly common occurrence because the flight takes only 7 minutes, and the locals prefer to choose the cheaper ferry. So, the plane still managed to make such a significant turn during those 7 minutes, and finally, we are standing on a tiny island, which looks more like a menacing volcano than a place suitable for living. But there is a town here, and it is quite cozy. There are only a couple of places to stay in the town, which had to be booked almost a month in advance. When we landed on the island, we immediately felt a specific atmosphere. The world was somewhere far away, and all around us were only the raging winds and the clouds floating in the sky, always hanging over the top of the volcano. This island has only one town, where all 435 islanders live. However, when walking around the town, it seems that you will meet more dogs and cats than locals. It is hard to even imagine how this community lives here, imprisoned in this cramped place. But after talking to the locals, it turns out that some even move here from other islands, or even return from America and stay here. According to them, it is safe here, because everyone knows each other. They do not lock their houses, and there is almost no crime. It was completely different here a few centuries ago, when pirates ruled the ocean. The island was attacked by pirates many times. The city was devastated and robbed. Some residents even ended up in slavery. Because of this, the streets of the town are extremely narrow. You can almost jump from one window to the next, so that in case of a pirate attack, our valuables could be thrown into the neighbor's house. Upon arriving here, we quickly felt like the only tourists on the entire island, but it didn't take long before we noticed many people with cameras and large lenses. It turns out that people come here to watch migrating birds. Bird watchers amaze me and at the same time fascinate me when I think about how much money they spend on photo equipment and how much it costs them to get to places like this, just to see a small, rare bird. And why did we come here? I can't find the answer. Probably a search for something unseen and unexperienced. For example, we have never walked in a volcano crater before, and here is such a place. Having risen to a height of 700 meters, we find ourselves on the edge of the volcano crater. There, in the crater, after descending about 300 meters, there is a small lake that you can walk around. The entire crater is green. It's like a pasture where cows and horses graze. By the way, most migratory birds also land here. For them, it's like a safe environment. High up, the sky is usually covered in fog, and the wind is blocked by the ridge of the volcano. The cows here are very timid, as if they've never seen strangers. I never thought that a cow could attack. It's not a good feeling, I thought, to be beaten by a cow in a volcano crater, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, especially since there's no communication here. And there's no doctor on the island either. I had already planned in my head the bullfighting steps to the side to avoid the blow, but the cow just wanted to scare me. She stopped half a meter from me. It's a kind of greeting and reminder of where we are and whose rules are here. Other thoughts also came to mind while walking around the crater. What if the volcano becomes active? What if it shoots like a cannon? It was unsettling, even though we knew the volcano was no longer active. The views while walking around the crater will be unforgettable, but the most impressive thing is the volcano's slope. Visible only from an airplane or drone, this is the steepest and highest cliff in the entire Atlantic Ocean, 718 meters straight down, straight into the ocean. So, apart from hiking, there's nothing else you can do on the island. I really wouldn't want to live here, but the place is very suitable for hiking. I wouldn't want to live here for one more reason: the food. As I already said in the previous part about the island of Flores, food is brought here by ship every few weeks. Because of this, it's hard to get fresh produce here. You can't buy anything in the store, and the food in the restaurants is the worst I've ever had. There are a couple of restaurants, and the main one is at the airport. Here, for example, stewed tuna, potatoes, and a salad of dried carrots. And this was the most delicious dish on the island. If you're hungry after a day of hiking, all kinds of food were fine. The time spent on the island was a test for the stomach. So now is the right time to talk in general about the food tasted in the Azores. As if I promised to tell you. In general, the Azorean cuisine is quite poor, so rustic. They seem to have products: fresh fish, beef, a lot of vegetables and fruits grow here. But somehow they can't cook them deliciously. We only ate deliciously in more luxurious places. In local restaurants, the fish will usually be overcooked, dry. The most delicious was probably the tuna steak, and it's best if it's rare. It is believed that tuna around the Azores is the least polluted, so eating it here is a must. Another dish that I really liked was limpets in a very delicious garlic butter sauce. And what would Portugal be without octopus? It is very fresh and delicious in the Azores. Of course, we ate a lot of fish and seafood, especially in more remote places. You really can't go wrong with fish here. It's always fresh, but it's not clear how it will be cooked. There were also chicharras, fried small fish served with a spicy sauce. This is a completely traditional Azorean dish. And from meat, we tasted the beef steak, but we didn't like it. We weren't impressed. Perhaps we were more impressed by the furnace stew, which I already talked about in the first part. The stew is stewed for 4 to 5 hours underground. You can usually find most of the meat dishes typical of the Azores in it. The blood sausage, which is spicy, was probably the most delicious in this stew. Personally, for me, it was tastier than our Lithuanian blood sausage. We also tasted the famous Azorean tea, of course, coffee and desserts, which may not have been anything special. We have already tasted them somewhere before. The Azores have a peculiar bread. It is so round in shape and is sweet. Let's go back to the island of Corvo, where we may not have had the opportunity to enjoy delicious food, but here we felt a sense of isolation. We spent 2 days far from the rest of the world. People here have lived isolated from the world for several centuries, and electricity was introduced here only in 1963. It's true these days, when you come down from the mountain to the town, you can always get an internet connection, and a pretty fast one, because the internet cables connecting Europe and America run through the Azores. I'm surprised that on an island, in such a small space, there is an airport, which was built for such a small number of people. Maybe it wouldn't be so lonely to live on this island. But not for us. We need new spaces and places. That's why we fly back to the mainland and are already planning our next trip. Travel, because once you've tasted travel, you can't stop.